everyone, this is episode 27 of the Get in My Garden podcast, and I'm Aaron Moskowitz. Today we learn about rewilding. There are very few people with the level of sincerity of our next guest. He has a great backstory and he calls himself Maximilian LionMan. Maximilian discusses the rewilding philosophy, the movement he is a part of to honor our ancient human ancestors, their wisdom, and their connection to the earth. We talk about the trajectory of modern man and ways we can lead more connected lives ourselves no matter where we live. Maximilian shares how to use the rewilding philosophy as a lens to evaluate the world and the choices we make on a daily basis to thrive, to maintain community, to reconnect to the earth, and to become more of our human selves. Please subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcasting app and leave positive reviews if you like the show. Also, I'm so grateful to the people who have reached out to me with ideas and connections for the podcast. It is the listeners who make the podcast community.
My name is Maximilian. I call myself Maximilian LionMan. People ask me, where do I get that name from? It's more of a new name. I wasn't given that name at birth by my parents, but it's something that I found along the way. A little background about me is I grew up in lower New York in an anthroposophical community, which means it's like going along with the biodynamic agriculture. And really blessed to have that, I guess kind of that connection with place and also like a spiritual connection coming from Germany. Steiner came to this area, or his teachings came here in the early 1900s. So I had that, and I came, to the rewilding thing as I was introduced to it when I was in community college. I had tried a lot of things in high school. Like I learned about Bragg's and the whole vegan movement and fasting and juices and all that stuff. It was great. But when I learned about the rewilding movement, especially Daniel Vitalis' work, it really impacted me. And I took a deep dive into it. I'm still here. I came back after 6 years. I got a bachelor's degree in upstate New York in wildlife biology. Then I went this past summer. I was growing some shiitake mushrooms in the Finger Lakes region. Then I went to Maine to study more primitive skills at the Maine Primitive Skills School. And that was an amazing experience. Not just the skills, but also the community skills and the community feeling towards that. And so
that's really cool.
Yeah. And
so you went from being a vegan to now rewilding. And what is that? Does that mean that you eat animals and you can you explain the philosophy to people and the movement?
Sure. So in terms of the food wise, I really call myself a conscientious omnivore, so I like to eat from all the kingdoms of life.
Gotcha.
So, and that goes back millions of years to hominid ancestors and even other great apes. Most great apes, they eat meat, but also in spectrum, some chimpanzees love to hunt, but not always do they get to hunt. So if you track human evolution, pretty amazing. Not to say I don't love plants, like I love foraging and I love wild plants and herbalism. So I'm trying to incorporate that into my own life, into my own body of teaching. I'm trying to see what works for me, and what makes me feel great and energetic and magnetic. The rewilding philosophy, I call it the rewilding lens. It's something that I've kind of adopted from this practical ethnobotanist up in Maine named Arthur Haynes.
So that basically means he's foraging for psychoactive
no, not
substances?
necessarily. A practical so ethnobotany is the study of how people relate to plants. Cultures relate to plants.
Oh, okay. I'm confusing it with, I think, ethnobotany maybe.
Entheogens.
Yeah, that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. So we have those teacher plants. There's a few thousand teacher plants in the world, and most indigenous cultures, if they can get their hands on it, they were welcoming that into their culture. And for reasons, many of us don't understand today, but I think it opens up sensory gaining awareness pathways. A lot of the work that Stephen Buhner has talked about that. I'm more talking about the rewilding lens. And, there's so much information today coming in from outside the Western dominant society about, you should look this way, act that way.
Absolutely.
All of these different health fads and, fitness fads. And so in terms of the rewilding lens, I use it as a screening. Does it make sense for our ancestors to, for example, the whole thing was, with the whole coconut oil can kill us. I think it's taken way out of context, in terms of, we know that many Polynesian peoples and tropical peoples living near the near the equator enjoyed coconut and its wide variety of uses, not just for food, and experience great health from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I use the rewilding lens as a screen. That was just one example, but as a screening process for me to kind of limit what comes into my psyche. And that way I can actually take action on certain things instead of getting overwhelmed by all types of things that are coming in constantly.
Gotcha. That makes sense to me. So what would somebody who's living in a city do to be more wild? I don't know if that's the goal, but I guess to have a bigger awareness of their environment, right?
Of course. I mean, it starts off, you can go to your park, your local park, and learn the plants and animals that live there and take off your shoes and do some natural movement and maybe climb a tree and maybe do some dancing. But even in your home in the city, you know, there's a lot of change you can take. A lot of the things that like the biohacking community has brought about, looking at like the quality of water that you drink, or, you know, the food that you buy at a grocery store, or the air quality in your home, or the circadian rhythm that you're following, you know, with all the light pollution and kind of trying to remediate that, or non-native EMF. So there's a lot of things that even people in urban areas can do. I think it's extremely important because as long as people are living in cities, it's important because we know that we evolved in nature and now we're experiencing this new kind of urban living. And not to say that there isn't benefits to urban living in terms of, you know, cultural things happening and the density of people. But if we can advocate for our own self and for our communities to have, you know, better air quality and water quality and food availability, real food availability, I think it can make a real difference in the community and individual health.
That's really great. And it seems like there are similar goals, I guess, the biohacking movements and some of the people in California who are, I mean, their goal is to become immortal. I think they're less thinking about the earth and our natural way of being, but maybe we're moving in that direction anyway.
Yeah, there's kind of two paths that we see in the rewilding movement. It's more the rewilding path, you know, or the transhumanistic path. And it's going down that route of escaping our mother, the earth, and going and colonizing other planets. What a lot of religious proselytizers like to say is like, you know, heaven's not here. Heaven on earth doesn't exist. It's spirit and matter are differentiated, they're separated. And progress in the name of progress, that we should leave earth and transcend earth. But it's in my perspective that we still have so much to learn about the ecology of humans, of the ecology of this place, our place on this world. And we evolved here. We belong here. You know, our bodies are adapted to the atmosphere, to the hydrology, to the geology, to all that. We're adapted to this place. And so I'm not saying throw away technology. In fact, that technology is a great avenue of learning and connecting, of networking. However, we noticed having some wariness and some strategies to kind of mitigate the negative impacts of modern technology is important.
Makes sense. Yeah. It seems like a lot of the people, I mean, right now they're pushing to go to Mars, they're pushing us into space, and they say that it's because we as humans must have something like that we are discovering, or else we are less human. So I guess they have more of an intellectual human outlook, but we're talking here more about our connection to our environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all about the intellect. I mean, also the intellect of the brain, but it's also about getting grounded in place and using other sensory apparatuses, not just the brain, and pushing the limits of human capabilities here on Earth and the human body in terms of exposure to the elements. You know, I think we've lost a lot of our wildness as the domestication process of Western society has progressed over the last 13,000 years. There's a lot of things that we can't do anymore as a species. Not saying that some individuals can't do certain things and that we haven't gained certain things.
Are you talking about primitive skills in that way, or actually physically unable to do?
Both. I mean, definitely primitive skills, you know, the ability to make fire from your landscape, to procure food, to procure water, you know, cleanse, purify, carry water, to build shelter, even communal skills, you know, it's very lacking in terms of how we communicate with others. But also like physical skills, you know, the whole hormesis idea, the circadian rhythm idea. It's about like pushing your limits, stretching your body to a limit, but not in terms, you know, you're not going to push yourself too much, but like even cold water plunges or fasting, all these things, you know, a lot of people.
I definitely understand that most people are just looking for their next meal, and that meal has to come every few hours or else they panic. Seems like it. Yeah. And that's definitely making it so their body can't even detox at all.
Well, food is a dissociation. I mean, most of us are addicted to something or another. We grow up in a society that traumatizes us from birth and separates us from our families. Especially with modern technology today, we have no need to have community. Like we all in our separate rooms on our separate computers. We think we have community, but really we're all separated. And loneliness and mortality have a big causation. There's a big linkage between them.
Absolutely. So if we're all going to become more wild and we're going to go back to our roots, at least in some ways, can you speak to what that does for us emotionally? Because, I mean, obviously what you just said would mean that we have to have more community, right? So we're doing some things together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, that saying, it takes a village, I think it can hit home pretty well. Communal meals, I guess, food is, brings people together in the greatest ways. And I think that if we could work together and connect with nature more in terms of how we procure food, not just depending on our grocery store, the modern grocery store like a Whole Foods, but seeing that there's a spectrum of food, how of food in the world and how we procure food. So a spectrum of either cultivating or growing or hunting or foraging your food. When we bring people out there and do it together to an extent, it really builds community. It's something I'm still exploring, and as I get deeper into the world of foraging, but it's really exciting, and I would definitely encourage it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a big question mark what that will look like as far as the modern world with 7.5 billion people.
Yeah, no, that's often a response to when we talk about foraging as a society. I don't really have an answer to that, but I know what works for me is going out and procuring a good amount of my food from the landscape and sharing that with my friends and family. And, one of the biggest things that we do, the biggest way we can vote is with our money. And when we start to buy food specifically that has a real story behind it, that has real people behind it, that we can interact with when we kind of eat within our bioregion, within our local ecosystem or our watershed, it has an amazing impact on our ability to make change. I think innately people know that the further that we get away from interacting with soil and growing food, the more disconnect we have and the more loneliness and all those associated negative aspects of modern living come about as we further disconnect from our food source.
Absolutely. Well, that's part of the mission of what I'm doing, connecting people back to their backyards, because we do, if 70% of the country has some piece of land that they can use, and our landscape has been geared only for ornamentals. Mm-hmm. And well, it changes people's lives when they get their hands back into the soil.
Yeah. I mean, there was research showing that when you smell soil, it increases some neurotransmitter activity it boosts happiness. So I would definitely agree with that, Aaron.
That's so cool. And Rewilding, it's a really cool name. I think most people, if you could give it on an elevator, if you were in an elevator with somebody and someone says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I mean, I picture you walking around the city barefoot, but obviously it's really just a philosophy, and you don't necessarily have to be doing that at all times, but it benefits you when you're able to be in nature, right? So what do you tell people in an elevator?
When they ask what is rewilding?
Yeah.
Well, I have the definition of the term rewild. It means, I have it here, rewild, a verb, means to restore to its natural uncultivated state. So, if we take a look at the human body and the human psyche, and we start to break down our lives into constituent parts to our food, our medicine, our clothing, our community, where we get our water. I feel like it's a philosophy that kind of honors our biology. It honors our biology in terms of, we know that we are a great ape, Homo sapiens sapiens, and it's looking towards reconnecting us with the natural world in all those categories. And by making categories of the human experience and how we relate to the outside world and to ourselves, I think it can hopefully create more of an integrated whole. And rewilding is a philosophy that looks towards the past, and it looks towards the diversity of past, the diversity of cultures, how history has progressed. And kind of at first there's a lot of anger, at least there's a lot of anger that came up for me in terms of, what have we done as a species, and community. Yeah. So there's more compassion for people, and there's more need to connect with people and to meet people where they're at. Rewilding is an awesome philosophy that I'm going to keep going down.
I like it. I like what you're saying. It makes me feel like we accept what we are rather than try to reject it. and become something new always.
Yeah, I think it's a very fluid. I think it's a very fluid word, and I think it's fluid and it's personalized. But it's, for me, it's how I walk in this world, and it's how I interact with the trees in my backyard, or the waters, or the certain ceremonies that I practice, or gratitude practices. How I eat, what kind of my philosophy around eating is. I put it all under the category of rewilding. It's easy. I don't know if there's like one definition for it, but it opens up a conversation,
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of background that happens for it, in terms of what you're interested in. But, you could talk about archaeology and botany, paleobotany. There's so many different theories under it, and so much background information that's almost like, sometimes it's hard to say what it is in one sentence. But in terms of an elevator pitch, it's a way of seeing the world that honors our biology and wants to move forward with the past. And so we could create for ourselves, a better human, and a better, more capable, healthy human.
I see. And it doesn't reject technology. It seems to me like they're pushing us into outer space, and they're going to have to create a different type of human in order to survive in those situations. Mm-hmm. And I could picture this situation in 500 years where we're here on Earth, and hopefully we've cared for it and recovered some of what we've done to it. And then there's a superhuman that is able to live in outer space and go to Mars and participate in a different economy and probably not eat fresh food. It's probably going to be very different what they're eating. Who knows? Yeah.
I remember Terrence McKenna talking once. I heard him, not in person, I'm too young for that, but he was talking about, the future of our planet and how there is an innate need to explore the galaxy. And however, someone's going to need to look over the earth and participate, take care of the earth. And he was talking more or less about leaving the indigenous peoples to this earth. So that's the whole movement of decolonization movement and the re-indigenization movement, which is a whole nother conversation that we could have.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So where would that put us all?
It's up to you though. Where would you want to put yourself? I don't think it's more of a top-down approach. I think it's from a bottom-up approach with the rewilding movement. It's kind of interacting with your own genetic blueprint, activating certain genetic expressions so you could live a healthier life. And I think it's really empowering. So what would that look like, Aaron? That's a great question. I'm not totally sure, but for me, I'm going to keep learning about the local flora and fauna of this planet, of my ecosystem here in the Northeast, and honoring the native peoples here. The Ramapo peoples live here.
Wow.
Right outside New York City. I'm about 20 miles north of New York City, and people are still here. The first peoples are still here. And they're still practicing. And, for me, I honor that. I recognize that. And, there's so much to learn from this place.
Absolutely.
And so I'm, coming into this new, kind of coming into this new life form as a young 20. I've almost gone around the sun 24 times. I'll turn 24 in January. But I feel like there's a lot of possibilities in terms of what directions we take in our lives. The more we can integrate with ourselves, with the traditional peoples, the traditional life ways.
I couldn't agree more.
I feel like the more healthier we can get. Yeah.
That's great. Now, do you want to speak to your business? Or you've created a business, is that right?
Yeah. So it's called the LionMan School of Rewilding. So right now we kind of just launched it. We launched the school in the summer. Right now, it's kind of in a slow time in terms of, winter's coming, and so the plants are dying back and going to sleep. So right now, we're just figuring out what works, what the people are needing. I'm just trying a couple of different options, seeing if people are more interested in foraging, or people are interested in traditional cooking and ancestral foods, or people more interested in growing their own food and permaculture design. It's really open, seeing what the people are needing. And you guys can check out my website, which is lionmanrewilding.com. I have a Facebook page, and Instagram is Maximilian LionMan. So, we're right outside New York City. It's one of the biggest cities in the world. And it's kind of ironic that in the edges of the cities, these kinds of things are coming up.
Oh, I think people are so hungry for it. It's going to be a great opportunity.
Yeah. I'm not trying to do this by myself either, and, I'm trying to build a team here, and it's great. It's a really exciting time. There's a lot of different paths that we can take, and ultimately it's just getting back to the land, right? It's getting back to the land and using technology and certain ways that can help us achieve that, in terms of, we don't have that many elders today, and we only eat. So a lot of our wisdom today comes from books and from technology. So understanding that's the case. It's more of, you got to use the tools that are available. you know?
Well, it's inspiring, and I think it'll help a lot of people in their lives in whatever way that they can connect back, because I think it is in our DNA that we need to be connected to the earth. And so many people are just floating through their lives, not really knowing how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like how you use the word floating for how we're, kind of just accepting the circumstances of our society and not taking control,
Absolutely. But they literally are floating above the earth too. Like, very few people ever get to walk barefoot on the lawn.
Mm-hmm.
And if they live in a city, they may live far above the ground.
Yeah, man. So I would say encourage you, just get, touch grass, touch a tree, make that contact. We know that the earth has an electrical pulse, and it accepts energy. So it's a great way of an easy detox. If you can touch get grounded for 15 minutes a day, take a walk in the park for 30 minutes instead of walking in a mall. There's plenty of studies showing that it increases gratitude and relaxation and productivity, all these things. There's a lot of possibilities for how we can bring nature into cities, how we can make the indoor spaces more in tune with our biology, honoring our biology. So there's a lot of room for growth in those sectors.
That's so great.
I feel like really honored to have the ability to come out and speak in terms of rewilding. I don't think many people have this opportunity in their lives to find something that they're so passionate about. So I'm really grateful to the movement in general, and to the people who have spearheaded this movement, and to all the indigenous people of the world. I say thank you, and to all the trees and to the waters. It's kind of hard to do it alone. So I'm working on finding community here in Chestnut Ridge and Lenape-Hoking, which means the people of the land of the Lenape, that encompasses this big area. And so I just want to end by saying thank you, Aaron, and thank you to the whole community that will listen to this. And hopefully we can, work together and actually make change for the better. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for health in the coming future. So I want to say thank you.
Well, my pleasure. I'm so happy to have you. And the message is awesome. I think people will connect with it, and I'll do what I can to get it out there.
Much appreciated, man. Let me know if I can help in any other way. Maybe we could talk again sometime soon.
Yeah, I may come back with some more questions.
Awesome, Aaron. All right, man.
Very great to chat with you.
All right, take care, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. I hope the wisdom of our ancestors inspires you to lead a more connected and human life, and that you can rewild or redesign elements of your own life in a way that honors our species and our interconnectedness with the earth and with each other. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcasting app, and if you are inspired to, leave positive reviews to help support the show. Massive gratitude.